Welcome to my channel, where the scariest stories come to life. Before we dive into today's chilling tale, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications, so you never miss a story. Now, let's get into the horror. This is something that happened back when I was about 10 or 12 years old. I'm an adult now, so it was a long time ago, but I still think about it sometimes. That's how weird and scary this situation actually was. To start out, I will mention that this was sometime in the early 2000s. Cell phones weren't as common back then, but my parents did have them. It was more common, though, for us to use our home phone, which was connected throughout our house. I think we had 2 or 3 of them. The main one was in the kitchen, and there was another in the living room. We didn't have any caller ID, so when a phone call came in, you didn't know who it was unless you answered it. I was an only child, so I didn't have any siblings. One night, my parents left to go shopping, and I stayed home because I wasn't interested in going that night. I would go with them about half the time, but most of the time, it was really boring. My parents would leave me home by myself all the time for small trips like that, and I was used to it. So that night, probably an hour after my parents left, I was in the kitchen, and the phone rang. I figured that it was probably my parents calling, so I picked up the phone and answered it. After I said hello, I expected to hear my mom's voice, but I didn't. It was a man's voice, which sounded really weird. It definitely wasn't my dad either. The man on the other end spoke very slowly and asked me who I was. I was kinda creeped out a little bit, but I just figured the person was probably calling for one of my parents. Because I was so caught off guard, though, I couldn't think of anything to say. I ended up just hanging up the phone right then and there. Afterwards, I went back to whatever I was doing. I don't remember much about the rest of the time my parents were gone that night. I know that when they came home, that guy didn't call back or anything. But only a few days later, the guy called back again. This time, my parents had already gone to bed, and I was up late watching TV in the living room. It was a Friday night, so I didn't have school and could stay up late. I'm guessing it was like 11 p.m. or so. When I heard the phone ringing, it was really strange. There were usually never phone calls this late at night. I wondered who it could possibly be, but I had no intention of answering it. I wasn't the type of person to just answer the phone unless my parents were gone, or I was expecting a call. I let it ring as I continued watching TV and sitting on the couch. The living room phone was just a little ways away from me. After the phone stopped ringing, I heard a beep and then could tell that somebody was going to leave a message. When somebody left a voicemail, you could hear it in real time. When I heard the person start to speak again, I instantly felt creeped out. It was the same man speaking in a deep and slow voice, just as he had before. He said something like, "Are you alone?" There was a little pause before he hung up. I wondered who this guy was. Sure, I didn't know all the people my parents knew, but I was really close with them. If they had talked with this guy on the phone before in the past, I feel like I would have known. And why was he calling so late at night? I went to the phone, which now had the flashing light that indicated there was a new message. I played it back, just to hear it again. It was certainly really strange. I only stayed up for a little bit longer that night, before going to bed. The next day, I forgot to tell my parents about the strange phone call, just as I had the other day as well. But later that night, we were all at home in the living room when the phone rang. It was kind of late again, probably after 8 p.m. or so. My mom walked over and answered the phone. I really didn't think much of it until my mom hung up the phone a very short time later without really saying anything. She said that when she answered the phone, she heard nothing, and then whoever was on the other end just hung up. My dad said it was probably a wrong number, but then I remembered the strange phone calls and told my parents about them. They said they were unaware of who that could be. We played the message from the previous night, and we all found it very weird. The best guess was that it was somebody who had the wrong number or was just a prankster. That night, we didn't get any other calls. We didn't get any for about a week. In that time, I basically forgot about it. But then one night, I was home by myself again. I think my parents were out shopping again, but I don't remember exactly where they were. It was dark out, and I was in the living room when the phone rang. Thinking that it was my parents, I answered it. But it wasn't. I heard the man's voice again. He started to speak, but I immediately hung up on him. I was too creeped out to listen to whatever he had to say. But just moments later, the phone rang again. I just knew that it was probably him calling back. On the slim chance that it was my parents, they could leave a message. When the phone stopped ringing, I heard that whoever it was going to leave a message. When the message started, I heard the man's voice again. He said that he could see that I was home right now. This was really weird. Could he really? How did he know that I was home? I went over to the window and opened the curtains a little, looking out to the street. I saw that there was a car parked on the side of the street, just a little ways back from our house. It was unusual to have any cars parked on the side of our street. I couldn't tell who was inside or anything, but the engine was on, and the car was running. I watched it for like 10 or 15 seconds, and it didn't move. This was possibly the man. After seeing this, I ran to the phone and called my mom on her cell phone. I told her what was happening, and she said they would head home immediately. I was too afraid to look out the window again, and I hid behind the couch until my parents got back home. They arrived maybe 10 minutes later, and when they did, they said the car was no longer in the street. I'm not sure where that guy went, but I was happy he was gone. After this happened, my parents didn't leave me home alone for a long time. Everywhere they went, they insisted that I came with them. We also unplugged our home phone for probably about a month. When we finally hooked it back up, whoever that guy was didn't call again. I don't know for sure if that was actually him parked on the side of the street, but I have a feeling it was. I also don't know who that guy was or why he kept calling us. A few years back, I got a new phone with a new number and everything. When I did, I called my best friend and was pretty sure I had her number memorized. Calling her was just about the first thing I did when I got my new phone. Right when I heard someone pick up, I said hi, but the person on the other end was a man. I didn't recognize the voice either. I asked if this was my friend's number, and the person said no. I realized I probably had the wrong number and told them that. The guy said something like, "No, who is this calling?" I just said sorry again and hung up. I looked back at the number I had dialed and realized that I had, in fact, dialed it wrong. I had mixed up one of the numbers, but everything else was correct. Then I called my friend, but as I was talking to her, I got a call from another number. It was the first guy I had called accidentally, and he was calling back. I ignored it and talked to my friend for about 10 minutes or so. The guy tried calling 2 more times during the call. Then, later that day, he tried calling me probably 5 more times, at least. I ignored all of them, but he just wouldn't stop. He kept calling, so finally, I answered. The man on the other end acted like he hadn't been blowing up my phone all day and night. He casually asked me what was going on and how I was doing. I asked him why he kept calling me, and he flat out ignored the question. I got mad and hung up on him after that, then blocked his number. Now, I wouldn't have to worry about this guy contacting me again. Or so I thought. Just the next day, I got a text from a new number. It said, "Why did you block me?" I asked who it was, but I really didn't need to. Obviously, I knew who it was. It was the guy who kept calling me. He probably made an account on one of those free text and call apps or whatever. He texted me back, confirming what I already knew, but I went ahead and blocked this number too. This didn't stop him, though. Whoever this guy was, he was very determined. A new number started calling me repeatedly later that day. I couldn't believe this guy was still trying to contact me. He just wouldn't give up. I texted this number, asking him to stop harassing me, but he didn't. Each time I blocked a number, a new one would appear. He would call me about 10 times a day and just wouldn't leave me alone. This went on for more than an entire week. I decided then that I was just going to get a new number. I had only had my number for about a week, and this guy would not leave me alone. After I was able to change my number again, I was finally left alone. That guy probably kept calling and texting my old number. If somebody else got it, I feel sorry for them. When the guy found out it wasn't me, hopefully, he left them alone. I still can't believe the lengths he went to just to get to me. I'm glad it didn't get worse. I live in a fairly small and quiet town, a little bit out in the country, and I live by myself. The story I'm about to tell you happened just a few months ago. One night, I was sleeping, but woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning. I remember that when I woke up, I heard my phone vibrating on the nightstand next to me. I ignored it and tried to go back to sleep, but whoever was calling me called again. After probably the third or fourth call, I finally woke up completely. Up until that point, I had kind of been half awake, just wanting to go back to sleep. I hadn't really realized how strange it was to receive a random phone call at that hour. I looked at the phone, and it simply said unknown number on the screen. This was also kind of odd. Now that I was fully awake, I could tell whoever it was really wanted me to answer, so I accepted the call. I said, "Hello," but at first, heard nothing on the other end. Then I heard the sound of heavy and deliberate breathing. That was it. I asked multiple times who was calling, but all I got in response was breathing noises. This had to be a joke. How else could I explain this? I was pretty sure that was the case. I mean, who calls someone at 2 o'clock in the morning and just breathes on the other end? They probably found some way to hide their number and were pulling a prank on me. I said something like, "Very funny," and then hung up on them. I went back to sleep. They actually didn't call me for the rest of the night, and I woke up the next morning at my normal time for work. It was about 7 a.m., and after getting up, I went into the kitchen. My kitchen is at the front of the house, and that's when I noticed something on my front window. There was a post-it note stuck to the window, and I found this really odd. It hadn't been there the night before. The window is in an obvious view of the house, and someone had to have put it there recently. I walked outside and picked it off the window. There was writing in pen on the sticky note, which said, "Call me back." I got chills when I read it. I connected it to the call I had gotten at 2 o'clock in the morning. This was really odd. Now, I don't live in a city where there are tons of houses. Like I said, I'm a little more out in the countryside. The houses are spread very far apart. I can barely even see my neighbor's house when I'm in my driveway. My driveway is also really long. For someone to be on my property, which has multiple "no trespassing" signs on it, this was really strange. I went to the police that day about it, just to let them know. I didn't really feel like I was in danger, but I thought I should report the situation because of how strange it was. It's a quiet town, and these things don't happen very often. Now, it very well could have been some guy in the neighborhood pulling a prank, but I've never had any pranks pulled on me like that before. I couldn't think of anyone who would do something like that to me either. Today, it remains a mystery, and I haven't had any strange phone calls since. This happened not too long ago. I got a call on my cell phone from a new number. I didn't recognize it, and most of the people I know show up with their name when they call me. But I recently graduated from college and have made a lot of friends over the years. There was a chance it could be someone I knew but didn't have their number saved. People get new phones and numbers sometimes, so I answered it. A man spoke and just said, "Hi." I asked who it was, and he said he got my number from one of my friends and hoped I didn't mind. I replied, "Okay, well, who are you?" But I was certain I didn't know who this guy was. He didn't answer me. At that point, I hung up. It was a pretty strange interaction. Something about the guy seemed off for sure, but I figured that was the end of it. He didn't call me for the rest of the day, but the next day, he texted me. The text said, "You can tell a lot about somebody by looking them up online." I didn't know what he meant by that. Was he saying he looked me up online? I had social media accounts like Instagram and Facebook, and people could find things about me there. I responded to his text, asking what he meant, and told him he was being creepy. The guy didn't respond right away, but the next day, I got more texts from him. This time, they were images. When I saw that, I got a bad feeling. I opened them to find one was a picture of my apartment complex, and the other was a picture of my car. It looked like he had taken the pictures himself. My car was parked in the lot of my apartment complex. At this point, things were beyond weird. Somehow, this guy had found out where I lived. I didn't understand what he was trying to prove by sending these pictures. It felt like he was bragging about being a stalker or something. After that, I immediately blocked him. What's crazy is that after I blocked him, I haven't been contacted by him again. Obviously, he couldn't reach me by phone because his number was blocked, but he didn't reach out on social media or anything either. I mean, I'm glad he didn't, but it's strange. I don't know why he stopped so suddenly. It all remains a bit of a mystery to me. Thanks for sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to give the video a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a terrifying tale. See you in the next one.